Well, good evening, everybody. This is Professor Dom. I wanted to kind of reach out to you just to, again, do a weekly recap, if you will, and also look ahead. Um, Let me begin by saying I've just gotten through the discussion thread 5 and I've assigned grades, and some of you are going to notice that your grades have changed. Either they've gone up or they've gone down. In the cases where they've gone up, more than likely they went up because you've added substance to your thread, your post. Um, you may have interacted more with other people, and certainly you hopefully also were able to post early so you could do those things, right? And afford others an opportunity to respond to you. Those of you on the flip side that lost points this week, more than likely, from what I can see, you lost points primarily because you posted on the last day or next to the last day, and you may have replied to others on the last day. Um, and that's not the best way to do this, okay? And I know that's going to happen, okay? There are times I'm running late, I'll miss the bus, right? And I have to wait for the next bus. And then I get docked, if you will, right? I got to work extra, either work through lunch or work a little later in the day. So I get it, those things happen. But if you build into your schedule the thinking that I can post everything on the last day, throw some comments in to a few of the classmates, and I'm chill. No, you're not, because that's not a discussion. Okay. Ideally, in the perfect world, you would all post on the morning of or the day when the thread is open, and you'd keep your posts brief. Okay. Some of you are just really writing too much. I have to say this. Uh, but if that's cathartic for you, if you enjoy it, I enjoy reading it, that's fine. But you're not impressing me by writing a lot, okay? I'm looking for substance, and I'm looking for how you may tease people to respond to your post if you're a bit provocative, and eliciting others to say, hey, wait a minute, I don't quite see it that way. So far, and you've all kept it civil and nice, don't get me wrong. Some of you are really good where you'll kind of politely challenge one another, and I welcome that. And I think we all do in society. Those of us that really care about having discussions and growing and maturing. Um, I so I just want to say that if you post late, it ain't that great. Okay, keep that in mind. I'm going to be looking at that each and every week with your threads, and also how well you work with one another and even respond to some of my um, queries or um, you know questions, if you will. So that handles this week's discussion thread. Okay, there's plenty of time to go in the semester, so don't get too concerned about your grade. But if you don't make any changes, expect the grade that you get. I think I'm being generous. So in that event, because I'm not looking to fail anyone, I would like for you all to get A's, but you need to work. If you want an A, you need to do some work. Okay. Okay, so I've covered that. Let me talk about the plant exercises 1 and 2. I found them really interesting. It's where we dealt with cultural relativism versus ethical egoism, and of course, the cultural relativism. I'm oversimplifying it. Is basically taking a look at society, your culture, the norms, and adopting those norms, okay, as your own, and saying, okay, that's the way it is. That's going to be my framework. I'm going to adopt those. It's kind of the old coinage, when in Rome, do as the Romans, right? Or, you know, what happens in Las Vegas stays in Las Vegas, right? That kind of stuff. Um, the average score was about a 6. The class, those of you that did it, most of you did the exercise, kind of averaged out to a 6. You kind of do look at your culture, okay? Um, and then the other planned exercise on ethical egoism, um, pretty much working towards your own rational self-interest. You scored higher. You're about an average of 8. So now that's not a bad thing. That doesn't mean you're egoist, as we know, and as we read, um, because you could juxtapose ethical egoism with this ethical, what do they call it? Subjectivism. That is kind of like the 1960s culture. I was a kid then, where what the hippies would say, some of them are your parents now, or maybe grandparents, and think about that. Them saying that long ago, if it feels good, just do it. And let me tell you, they were doing it. Okay, they were doing it. Doing what I ain't gonna say, but they were doing it. Okay, now that's different than ethical um, egoism, because in ethical egoism, you're doing what's really in your best interest. And the thinker will say, just because I can go in that store and steal that bag of potato chips because I'm hungry, I ain't doing it. I'm not going to do it. That's the difference, right? Where the ethical subjective person kind of is dictated by feeling. So you kind of see that distinction of the upper and lower brain working kind of together, and the upper brain saying, keep your carnal passions in check, okay? It's not in your best interest to go out and do whatever, okay? So some of those from the 60s kind of did get that wrong, okay? So anyway, it was just interesting. What I'm concerned about, though, and I'll tell you I'm concerned about this, based upon the pop quiz results, where, and I'm putting it kind of mildly, a lot of you would have sold out your neighbors, man. I'm telling you, you folks would have sold out your neighbors. So many of you. And I'm sorry for putting it that way, but when you responded that you would not, a significant number of you would not take a moral position that could possibly put yourself or family in jeopardy to save people who you knew were probably going to either be gas chambered, shot in the back of the head, maybe tortured, raped, subjected to surgical procedures without anesthesia. And you folks kind of said, I'm not putting my neck out for those folks. Now you look at your answers here about cultural relativism. This is what I want you to think about. And you can call me or email me if you either disagree or strongly agree with the point, because we could talk about it offline. But don't you see a connection? A lot of you on 1.1, the average score is about, what did I say, 6, right? You're saying, hey, I look to society. Whatever society says is cool. I'll do it. It's okay to kill those Jews. Oh, he's gay. Get rid of him. Oh, they're disabled. We don't need them. Catholic priest from Poland. Out of here. So what are we saying, folks? Are we saying that many of you in class won't stand up to do the right thing? What is the right thing? Now that's where we're starting to get into discussion thread 6 and in our readings. What are your values, your core, hardcore values that you're going to stand by? Some of you probably never thought about it this way, but you should. If I asked you, and I might in a pop quiz, you never know. If I asked you, pick the one thing or one person you would literally die for, no questions asked, what would it be? I'm not asking you for 2, 3, one thing or one person. So again, What are the core values? Are you being swayed by popular culture? Seems like the Nazis would have convinced you to basically allow innocent people, your neighbors, maybe even family, to face heinous murder, death, torture. I mean, think about that. Are you morally bankrupt? Are you not critically thinking? All right? That's the scary thing. I mean, Halloween's coming. I thought I wasn't going to get scared until the end of the month. You folks are scaring me now, okay, with some of this. So, who are you? What do you really believe in? And do you think you're as good as you think you are? You practicing Christian. Some of you tell me you're Christian. I bet you can tell me the scripture, John 3:16. I bet you know it beautifully. But do you know the first letter of John 3:16 and what it says? Look it up. Reconcile the two. And if you, professing Christian, really believe what you purport to believe, go back and check the answer that you gave on the pop quiz, and are you really dealing with cultural relativism? Do you understand what you're saying? How do you reconcile that to your faith? And I don't mean to pick on Christians. Believe me, I know. I'm using them as an example because I know the religion. I happen to be one. But you could be Jewish or Buddhist, atheist. Think about reconciling your values with what you answered on the pop quiz and now with how you're answering Plant in particular 1.1. There's a thread there, you know? So, anyway, I'm not going to go on because I could really get into this a little bit deeper, but we could do it on the phone offline, if anything. So that deals with the Plant exercises. Discussion thread 6. Now this is interesting. I mean, it's just going to be a pretty light read. This should be an easier week for you. For some of you, every week is easy, I'm pretty sure. For others, I'm sure it's hard. But all kidding aside, utilitarianism, is doing really what makes people happy. Think about your happy-go-lucky or lucky politician, kissing babies, handing out cigars, bringing flowers to the mothers and ladies, just whatever makes them happy so they vote for me kind of thing, And then there's deontology, which says, no. Don't worry about making people happy. If you're an elected representative and you got to cut the budget and you got to raise taxes, do it. Because that's the right thing to do. No matter what, it's the right thing to do. Okay? So, think about these, and you're going to have a couple of examples. What makes people happy. And again, I kind of go back to, this cultural relativism and how some of you kind of scamming me before Halloween, man. You're freaking me out. I mean, even Boss writes about this. What made people happy in the Deep South at one time was taking black Americans and Central and Southern Italians and even Greeks and lynching them. The second most lynched group in this country were Italians. And you know who brought that statistic out? African American researchers who researched their own history. They uncovered, I don't even think the Italians knew this. And this is why we actually have Columbus Day, because of that. So thank you to my African American brothers and sisters who know how to research and come up with the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Okay? Because it makes you think. Those people down south, they sought pleasure in lynching. Does that make it right? go back. The lockdowns, forced vaccine mandates, or you lose your job and you can't feed your family or pay your mortgage and you're out on the street and we don't care. Why? Because we think you're of a certain political persuasion. Was that right? No, I don't think so. I certainly would argue against it. Okay. So, what about deontology now? We can flip some of this around and say, don't you have a moral obligation and duty to become vaccinated and protect your neighbor and your family? Yeah, you could argue that, right? Deontology would say the rules are the rules. If the rules say in our culture you commit a robbery, we can hang you from a tree. That's it. The rules are the rules. So you see, I mean, these are all in a vacuum, of course, but they're to, again, show you, like we do in economics, right? We keep all things equal in economics, and we show you the supply and demand curve and how they're supposed to work in theory. In reality, they work in mysterious ways because the variables are great. Well, the same thing in human behavior. The variables are great, which means that we really don't adopt one ethical framework. We shift during the day, if not during, I would say during the day. We shift from one ethical framework to another. Hopefully, though, those core value pillars that I'm talking about are there and are the same. Because if they change, you might have psychological, spiritual, societal kind of problems because you need some type of core value no matter what ethical framework you might be operating in that day or in that job, okay? Because it does happen. We shift from one framework to another. It's a blend often, right? All right, so just think about this. Think about the thread again. You know, why you're scaring Professor Savini, right? You know, last thing, paper 3 prompts. Paper 3, let's see, when does paper 3 due? I believe it's due the 30, I'm sorry, paper 2 is due the 31st of October, right? So remember, in paper 2, we're going to be talking about your environment. Now, in paper 1, we spoke about integrity and competence, okay? Paper 2, you're going to be looking at your environment, let's say at work. For those of you that don't work, maybe home or a club, a church, wherever. And you're going to analyze that. You're going to analyze your boss, co-workers, customers, and try to generalize, if you will, or if not generalize, if you know the boss well enough or your customers well enough. I guess you can more or less generalize your customers because they're a mix of people as opposed to being just one customer, right? Although some of you might only have one customer. But if you've got a mix of people, you'll have to generalize and kind of say, okay, my customers typically fit in this ethical framework. I kind of think this is where they're operating from. Your boss could be, you know, hardcore, the rules are the rules, you know, you must obey the policy kind of guy or gal. So they follow the deontology. Or maybe like some of you may have had a boss that can't make up their mind, you know, and they like shift and, you know, well, I don't know what the people think. What would they think of me? You know, so maybe they're a cultural relativist, right? Or maybe, you know, a utilitarian, you know, and they want to please everybody. So your job is to kind of smoke them out, identify their frameworks, identify the environment you're in, and then compare your framework to theirs, basically. Because I'm setting you up in paper 3, or in paper 1 and 2, to answer paper 3, which is identifying your deliverables, what you work on day to day, and how can you build ethics into the work you do. And you really can't build ethics into the work you do, I guess, unless you understand your environment, who you're up against, what your customers are expecting. Um, and for some of you, after you're done with the 3 papers, you might say, I'm getting out of this job, right? There's no way I can do anything ethical in this job. So that's what we're doing in paper 2. One of the things I want to ask of you for paper 2, courage. Discuss courage. We may have done some light reading in Boss on courage, if I'm not mistaken. I think she may have touched on it. If I'm mistaken, remind me. But I believe we touched on it in the reading. Talk to me about courage. Because it sounds like, not that you folks, half of you or however many of you that would have not stood up for those folks, was it because of a lack of courage, fear? So on your job, how are you going to improve the ethics on your job if you don't have courage to maybe stand up to a bully boss, right? Or a tyrant coworker, or a corrupt customer? Without courage, you could have all the head knowledge, you can even have a heart, compassion, or sense of righteousness like social justice folks and stuff. But if you don't have courage, you're not going to be able to do much. Okay? So understand, I'm here to provoke you. I'm here to challenge you. So to my Christian friends out there, my other religious folks, don't take anything per se out of context, because I'll push back. This is all designed to make us think, to grow, and to become better people. No matter whether or not we practice a religion or not, we want to hopefully become better in mind, in body, and in spirit. Because only those 3 working together can truly bring harmony, and I say love and music in your life. Those 3 must be in balance, okay? So with that, I bid you farewell this evening, and if you're going to watch this tomorrow morning, or if you are watching it tomorrow morning, have a great day at work, and any questions, give me a call. But I'm hoping this video helps answer a few things and makes you grow. Take care.